Hey, so welcome to part 2 of my FLŌ TRIBE podcast interview with Sam Goulden. So if you haven't seen part 1, obviously I'd love for you to go check it out. But if you want to start here, that's okay too. So Sam is a golf professional, he's a golf teacher, and he also founded the MNML Golf Company, so he's an entrepreneur. In part 1, we focus more on golf, specifically the mental game, and everything he's learned as both a coach and a competitor. In part 2, we actually focused on his business, how he got started, and what I found really fascinating is how he was able to apply a lot of what he's learned, both teaching and competing in golf, and applied it to building his business. So I hope you enjoy this interview as much as I did. So here is part 2 of my interview with Sam Goulden. We're talking about sports performance. We're not talking about golf performance necessarily.
Right.
We're talking about...
And that's like, I would say along the lines of sports performance versus golf performance alone, I had a call yesterday, an hour-long call in the Trader Joe's parking lot with a tennis player who I worked with 4 or 5 years ago. Started working with 4 or 5 years ago. He was at UCLA. Was the #1 player there, and now he's going pro. And a year ago, he was 1,500 in the world, and now he's 490 something. And I had an hour-long conversation sitting in the car at Trader Joe's talking to Gage, who's in Mexico right now, talking about this exact same thing, about the belief that it's going to take him, because he just moved up 1,000 spots in the world ranking. That's a huge leap.
Yeah.
So how do you... Like now he's in the top 500, which was a goal.
Now it gets harder.
Right. And it's like, okay, so what do I do now? Because I'm starting to find that I'm getting comfortable or complacent here.
Yeah.
How do I keep pushing, and how do I believe that I should go somewhere else? And then at the end of the day, the whole conversation was about, what do the stats say about your game?
Yeah.
Should you beat that guy?
Yeah.
Should you? If you shouldn't, work on your stats.
Yeah.
So that you believe that you should.
Yeah.
And once you believe you should, you will.
Yeah.
And it's the same in tennis as it is in golf or anything else.
But I think it's interesting. The mountain is a really great analogy where if you start at the bottom of the mountain, getting halfway up the mountain is pretty easy, right? But the higher you get, the altitude gets there, right? The snow.
Right.
Like meaning that the closer to the top.
Really, it is easier.
Yeah.
In real life.
In real life, right?
Yeah.
And the closer you get to the top, the harder those last few kilometers or whatever it is, because the elements increase. Like there's more snow, it's colder, there's less oxygen to breathe. Like everything is harder. And I think it's the same in sports and golf and tennis, where the closer to the top I get, the competition is just way harder.
Yeah, the top
like you're not facing the same guys in the bottom in the top 1,000 as you are in the top 50.
No.
And I think in golf, and that's maybe something that's always kind of I found interesting, is if you look at a lot of the development tours, right, in golf, these are really good golfers.
Yeah.
These are guys who are shooting 6, 7, 8 under par, and yet they're not good enough to make it to the PGA Tour. So what's the difference there? Is it skill? Is it mental? Is it a combination of factors? Like I'd be curious to know from your perspective, what is that difference? Because I think that goes for all sports. There's guys out there with incredible talent, but yet don't manage to perform at the right moment. So I think, again, it probably comes down to the mental game, but maybe there's something else.
I would say our belief in our ability drives all our actions.
Yeah.
So a good example of, we're using a golf bag box as our coffee table here. This company, when I first started looking at it, I used other companies in the space that I felt like, in the golf space, that I felt like I could compare myself to as like benchmarks. And I thought, okay, well, there's another company out there who sold for 125 million. They were around for 10 or 12 years and they have all this stuff. And so I kind of used them as a gauge. It was like, okay, that's doable. There's a guy out there who did that, who's a guy who has
it's possible.
Yeah, I could maybe do that. It's not Ping.
Yeah. It's
not Titleist.
Yeah.
It's not some amazing company. It's just a guy who started a brand and did that. So I'm like, okay, I could do that. And I remember telling a friend of mine, Jim, he founded Oakley and then founded Red Cameras. And I remember telling him, like, I was like, hey, I think I want to make all these amazing products, and I want to only make products that are better for people. I don't want to just make another thing. I want to make, if I can make it better, I'm going to make it. If I can't make it better, I'm not going to make it. Besides like hats and t-shirts.
Yeah.
I don't expect to revolutionize the t-shirt. But anyway, I remember after my conversation with Jim, and I was telling him that, I thought $100 million was a good benchmark for this company. I remember like coming back and thinking, holy shit.
Did I just say that?
Well, okay, so I said that, and to me, that's a big number, right? It was a big number. Now I've said it enough times, I don't think it's a big number anymore. But I used to think it was a really big number. So it was like, convince yourself. Now it's like, well, yeah, just do this in sales this year, this in sales this year, and then you're at a $100 million company. But I remember thinking, wow, this guy sold Oakley for $3.2 billion or something like that. He probably is laughing in his head. He's probably not laughing at me, but he wouldn't even start a company. He wouldn't even think about starting a company that was only going to do 100 million.
Yeah.
So like,
it's all perspective.
It's all, and so to get back to what I mean, like where your belief drives every action, if I'm looking at making this company into $1 billion company versus a $100 million company or even a $10 million company, there's a lot of differences in the way I go about it. Like I might think, okay, this is a 10-year play instead of a 5-year play, or this is, we need to get this really down, and then year 2, this is how we expand and grow, and this is how we expand and grow in year 3, because the timeline and the direction we're going is so different.
Of course.
But I can't see in my head $1 billion because it's too far outside of my comfort zone. So I would just be like ridiculous if I said I'm going to make $1 billion company and nobody would believe me.
Yeah.
But if I say 100 million and I believe it, and I can show you examples of other companies, and I can show you my everything and say like, this is how we get there. It's like, well, yeah, that's okay.
And I think I like that we've segued into kind of entrepreneurial stuff now, away from golf a little bit, but that's kind of the other point that I wanted to discuss with you is this idea of, and what you're talking about, belief when it comes to building a company. Very much like your golf game, first, yes, belief is super important, but you also have to face the reality of the business world, right? So I believe I'm going to build this $1 billion company. Okay, but let's start maybe with a smaller goal as a proof of concept before you go too far. Because I think a trap that people get into is these very lofty goals, and they don't see the steps that will get them there. So they spend a very long time kind of spinning their wheels because their goal is so far in the future, they have no idea how to get there.
Yeah.
Right? So sometimes you have to set much more realistic goals for yourself. Keep that big vision in mind, but allow yourself to break that down. Right? Okay, I want to get to 100 million. Okay, but first I have to get to 1 million. And after that, and so how do you balance that? How do you balance the big idea, but create and make sure you focus on those steps that'll get you there?
So for me, it's the same as in golf. I look at a player's ability, where they stand right now, and I measure out all their performance. So I measure out their putting ability, their chipping ability, pitching, bunkers, all of it. And I look at their game and I say, okay, here's where you are. And I can take you, I know what it is to be a +3 handicap. So I have an official handicap card that's +3.
Yeah.
So I know what that looks like, and I know what it looks like for my other students and for other professionals, and I know what +5 looks like from other professionals. I can tell you where you're not a +5 in all these categories, and then I can build a program that has a timeline that leads you to +5.
Yeah.
And depending on how many hours, so if it were possible to spend 100 hours this week working on your game, you'd be 100 hours closer to that.
Yeah.
I know what that takes in golf. So I just apply that to my business and say, okay, so what is a $100 million company? Well, it's actually not even, you don't do 100 million in sales. You don't do 100 million in revenue. Even you do 25 million, and then someone looks at your company and goes, wow, look at that growth.
Yeah.
You went from 1 to 3 to 7 to 12 to 25. We're going up here. You're going to be worth 100 million in
It's your valuation.
2 or 3 years, right? So once I understood that, what it takes to become a $100 million company, then it's like, all right, so I need to get to 25 million in sales.
Yeah.
And this is all like on the numbers side. It's obviously a very passionate project for me too.
Of course.
But I do have that mind of like, where's my goal financially? So it's 25 million. Okay, let's get to 25 million. Well, what is that? How many golf bags is that? And then once you have that number, it's like, damn, that's a lot of golf bags. Do we need to sell other things?
Yeah.
Let's see if we can do like 20% of our sales in apparel and some other high margin items. So it's like, all right, what are we going to put into apparel, and how are we going to get that number to that number? And then you go back from the 25 million down to like, okay, let's see, what would be a normal curve? Okay, like if we go 2, 7, 12, 25, that's like a curve that I can imagine, or 2, 5, 12, whatever. And then you go, okay, so that means that in this next year, I need to do 2 million in sales. How many bags is that?
Yeah.
Okay, how many bags is that in a 90-day period? And how many bags is that in 1 month?
That's it. What you're talking about is breaking it down, right?
Just
like
break it down
into these
little micro goals.
pieces.
And then it's like, oh, well, that's 3 bags a day. We have to sell 3 bags a day. We're not selling 3 bags a day right now.
Yeah.
But can we sell 3 bags a day, and what's a sustainable way? Like I can't stand in the street on Highland Avenue and be like, you want to buy a golf bag that's not sustainable or growable. I'm not going to hire 1 million people to do that.
Yeah.
So, but how can we build an infrastructure that sells 3 bags a day and then can be scaled to sell 7 and then 20 and then 100? And that's it. Once you have the 3 figured out, you scale it to 7.
Okay.
20,
So I'd be
100.
curious to hear you talk. You've obviously, I think you have that mindset of growth, right? And a growth mindset, I think, is what everybody needs, but not everybody has. I think, like, for example, for myself, one problem is I've always been good at seeing that big lofty goal at the end, but I've always had a very hard time in breaking that down into manageable chunks, which limits me. It limits my ability to make things happen because I'm just going after this thing that's not really achievable without a plan. Right? So where did that come from in you? Because I know that, right away you kind of figured out like, all right, teaching's great, but I don't think this is enough for me. So then you wrote this book, and then you're like, oh, and maybe I'll do some videos. And then suddenly an app project, and now this golf bag company. So where did that come? Where does that come from? I'm curious.
I listened to a podcast a couple of years ago that had like a serious influence on the way I think about what I'm doing in my life.
Yeah.
The thing the guy said, and I can't remember who it was, but he's sitting in front of a bunch of MBA students in a 400 people class, right? 400 person class. He's sitting there, and the professor asks him, he's like, so, what is it about being an entrepreneur? Why should you be an entrepreneur? Just some vague question. And the guy's like, I want to stop you. Like, for all of you people in this classroom, if you're thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, don't do anything unless it's going to be the best, or one of the best, or one of the coolest, or it's a brand new, unique idea. Don't just open another mom and pop store. Don't just open another restaurant on the corner. Like, it's so much work. It takes so much energy and so much mental, if you're not thinking about it in the shower and like trying to finish the shower,
you're not waking
quickly
up at night and grabbing your journal because you have this idea and like,
I think anybody who, if you want it that bad, like I remember, so 4 hours of short game, right? It never felt like work to me because if I would have thought that 12 hours of short game would have gotten me there faster, I would have done 12. So like if you're in the shower and you're like forgetting to rinse the soap out of your hair because you want to get to work so quick on this thing, you will eventually find the steps.
Yeah.
I think for me, like I didn't learn it that early on. I mean, I spent 10 years practicing golf before I realized that there was a better way and a more, purposeful way. And 10 years coaching too. So for all my students for those first 10 years, like I definitely helped them, but I didn't help them as much as I can now because I understand.
I think, absolutely.
So I think to answer your question, I learned it because I had this insane passion for helping people get better and also for my own game. And so it was inevitable. I had to find it. There's no way I wasn't going to find out that the process is really important, but that doesn't happen unless you aren't in the shower forgetting to rinse the soap out of your hair.
And I think also it's partly having that creative mindset, right? I think the creative mindset for me has always been the fuel. It's just this idea of putting something into the world that currently doesn't exist. Right?
Yeah.
So if you're a teacher and you love teaching and you're just teaching the same lessons for the past, I've met in martial arts and I've met it in other sports and coaches who are still coaching the same method they were coaching 20 years ago. And that's fine. That's fine for some people and they like that, the safety of that. Right? But I think there's people out there who just need to know that, I'm going to birth something that hasn't been done before, that hasn't been seen before, or that has, but I'm going to do a better version of that. And I think that's something you just can't teach. I think that there are people who want to do that and there are people who don't.
I agree with you fully. I remember when I used to look at my sister and her family, and my sister has a great job. She works for MasterCard. She's pretty high up there now and keeps getting these promotions. And they've got a great house now in St. Louis in this great little neighborhood, and they have this beautiful life. And her husband is super entrepreneurial. This guy's working like a madman, and he's crushing it. My sister is just doing this job every day. And I always used to think, like, I don't know if I ever like told her, but I always used to think, like, man, come on, like, you know, what's your passion? Like, don't you have a passion? What if you really loved going to work? And what I found out is that for her, in this lifetime anyway, or I think, I shouldn't put this on her, but her passion is her family. So she goes to work every day because that supports her passion, which is raising 2 kids and supporting her husband in all of his entrepreneurial, you know, decisions. So some of us are like me, who are like willing to live in my car and
absolutely.
Stuff like that.
Make the sacrifices.
Because all our passion is about creating something. And then other people's entire lives' passion, they're about supporting someone else or raising a family or whatever that might be. So I do think, some people are meant to be creators and some people are meant to be supporters, and there's nothing good or like, you got to have a supporter. For every creator, 100%. You've got to have a supporter, right?
100%.
We can't all be creators and we can't all be supporters. Otherwise, nothing new would happen. So.
But I think what you touched on is so important, is if you don't wake up in the morning with this need to do it, it's going to be really hard.
Yeah, don't even do it. Like, I mean, I can get a job at I could go back to Puerto Rico and I could get a job run the golf resort there. Or, you know, like, get a job if you just want to, if you're just want to enjoy life. Like, there's a lot of life that I miss out on that sometimes I'm like, man, like, I'm not going to get to surf today because I've got a really full schedule today. But at the same time, I have this big picture goal that I really, really want. And I know that fulfilling my daily goals gets me to that big picture goal. So I'm not upset about missing the surf. If it were work for me and if it were a pain and I was bummed about missing the surf today so bad that it ruined my day, well, then I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing. I should just get a job and then I can surf every morning before work because I don't have to get up special early any special days.
And I think for me too, it's been this idea where if I'm doing something that I enjoy, but I'm not really enjoying it because I feel guilty because I should be doing that other thing that I said I would finish or whatever it is, then maybe it's like, okay, maybe it's time to take that little break from what I enjoy and get the work done. So the next time I come back to doing this thing, I don't feel guilty. Right? Because it's a weird balance sometimes to figure that out. It's like, you love surfing, but it's like, but if I'm surfing, but knowing then back in my mind, I should be at work building this thing, I won't enjoy the surfing as much and this thing won't get done. So maybe I should just skip the surfing and get that thing done. So the next time I come back to surfing, I'm really surfing and really enjoying the process. Yeah,
that's the entrepreneurial, like, the code that you need to figure out for yourself. For me, I can't, I think maybe it's the same for everybody, but I can't enjoy something else when I know I've let something else slide. And that's why scheduling is so important for me. Like, my whole day will end at a certain time. Right now it's at about 8 o'clock at night. So nothing can happen after 8 o'clock. It's done, it's over. And the next day starts at 10 a.m. That's after my morning surf. Like today we were meeting at 10. So I had stuff that I needed to do that I normally would do in this window that I had to do before this window. So I missed the morning surf, right? But like setting up that block of time and then being as efficient as possible in that block of time is so critical for my life. Otherwise, I remember what it was like. I would be at home at like 2 a.m, like working on stuff because there's endless work, right?
It's never going to stop.
But I just...
But you can only sustain that for a certain amount of time.
Yeah, no, and if you're not getting good sleep, then the work you're putting in is pretty low quality.
100%.
So, and if you're not exercising, you know, there's like this whole like level of diet and nutrition and sleep that has to work to make you as good as possible.
Yeah, and I think also you have to think long term. Okay, I might sacrifice these things now and get a certain amount of work done now, but what's that going to look like in a few months when I'm sick? What's that going to look like in a few months when I'm tired and not focused and not performing at my best?
Yeah.
Right?
And it's a question of like, what do I want to do? Like, do I want to go to Bali for 3 weeks and surf? Like, I can tell you right now with 100% certainty, no.
Yeah.
Which shouldn't be the case.
Yeah.
Like,
Who wouldn't want to?
Right. I should say yes, but I don't want to go to Bali right now, because if I go to Bali right now, a bunch of other things drop.
Yeah.
And like, I don't want any of these things to drop.
Yeah.
So no, I don't want to go to Bali.
Because you're going to go to Bali, and the whole time you're in Bali, you're going to think about all the things you're not doing because you're there. And then you're going to come home to all that stuff that you should have been doing. And now all of a sudden that trip to Bali is a big regret.
Yeah.
And why do that to yourself?
So it's about like, I don't want to surf this morning because I want to get my stuff done.
Yeah.
Like, that I have set for myself that I want to get done. And so if you can get to that place where the coolest thing I can think of, obviously, because I just named it, is a 3-week surf trip to Bali. Yeah. But like, if that coolest thing you can think of, if you can say, I don't want to do that because I want to do this, I think you're.
Yeah, and I think something that I recently started doing that's helped me a lot is at the end of each day, what was happening is at the end of each day, I was feeling like I didn't get enough done today. Okay. And there was this sense of like, I didn't do enough today because I have all these things left to do, right? But then I started flipping the script and saying, okay, let me look back on that day. And I started, I think probably doing what you do is catalog my time. How did I spend that time? And then I'm like, I could not have done more today. Yeah. Like, this was the best I could do in a balanced way. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I spent time with my son. Should I have sacrificed that to get a little bit more work done? No, because that's important to me. Yeah. And so now I look back at the end of the day, I'm like, okay, and if I did waste some time somewhere, I see it. Yeah. And I catch it. And I'm like, okay, well, look, that hour here, that could have been better. So tomorrow I'll make up for it. And now it's like, it's the same day. I'm spending the same amount of time in that day, but I'm coming at it from a new perspective. So the next day I'm like, all right, what else? What can I do today to make sure that at the end of this day, I look back on it and think, yep, I did everything I could today.
That's the thing. I read this book recently called The 5 a.m. Club. Okay. I'm not getting up at 5 a.m.
Yeah, me neither.
I think if I had a 40-hour week, if I had a standardized day and job, I'd have to get up a lot earlier. But the practices from the book, some of the really cool ones, using the first hour of your day to schedule out what you're going to do in that day. Part of it, 20 minutes of that first hour is like, what am I going to do today? Yeah. By creating that for yourself and saying, this is what I'm going to do today. And like, or this is all my, so for me, what I do is I have this handwritten to-do list that I constantly scribble on and then check off and then add a new piece of paper to. And so that handwritten list on the side of my computer is stuff that comes up all the time. Yeah. Like, I have a thought, and I write it down. Yeah. And then in the morning, I look at all the stuff on my list and see what's on my calendar already and what's not. And if it's not on my calendar and it's urgent, then it goes onto my calendar. Yeah. And it only goes between 10 and 5 because that 6:30 to 8 window is reserved for a golf lesson if I'm teaching someone. So I have just this window. And what I found is that like that one phone call that might like weigh on you, like I need to call that guy from Southern Hills. I need to call that guy from Southern Hills. It takes it's a 5-minute call.
Just do it.
And you can just write it. Yeah. And I used to do that, just be like, just do it right now. But actually, I just schedule it now. Yeah. So it's like, okay,
it's out of your mind.
Southern Highlands, or Southern Hills. I got to call this guy. So when can I do that in my schedule? Oh, it looks like at 10:20, I've got a window there. It's a 5-minute call. 10:20 to 10:25 might have been spent on Instagram, but now it's spent on that call. Yeah. And not only did I keep it out of the back of my mind by putting it on the list and then in my calendar, I make sure I know it's going to get done. Yeah. So at 9 a.m. when I'm in the water or getting out of the water, I'm not thinking like, man, I got so much to do today. No. I'm like, no.
I have this to do today.
Yeah. I'm going to check my emails first thing, and then then the next thing that's on my calendar, I don't even know what it is. Yeah. Because I put it on there yet.
It doesn't matter. Because you know it's
gone.
There.
Yeah.
Once your system's in place, it takes away a lot of the stress because you know that the system will take care of everything. As long as you abide to it.
Exactly. Right? The system, it will take care of everything. And then, of course, you have to be accountable to your own system.
100%. And that's easy to get sidetracked. But I think it's practice, too, like anything else. The more often the more successful days you have based on your system, the more likely you are to stick to the system. Yeah. Right? And I think that's a good place to stop.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool, man.
We touched on a lot of really
good
stuff.
Super fun.
So where can people connect with you? Golf teacher, entrepreneur? what's going on with you, and what do you want people to check out?
I really want people to check out the golf bag.
Yep.
It's I think.
And I'll put all the links and stuff in the description of the video. But let's
yeah. The bag itself, it's just a modern version of the essentials for the golf course. So it's got a Bluetooth speaker, solar panel, so you can charge your phone. It's got a little slot that turns the bag into a tripod so you can film your swing. And then it's made really, really well. It's really high quality. So yeah, I want people to check the bag out for sure. That's my passion project right now. But then my coaching, samgoulden.golf.com, and there's a couple different options there. But yeah, those are the two main things. If you type my name in at this point, you'll find it. Yeah. So.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Cool. Yeah, thank you. That was fun.
That was awesome.